What's up YouTube, it's Alex and I'm back again for yet another video. So today we will be breaking down the 6th MCU movie, which is Thor 1. So, as I always do at the beginning of my videos, I have some random trivia for you guys. And that trivia is Thor 1 had actually been in development hell since the early 1990s. The Marvel Studios had actually known that they wanted to make a new redo Thor because they had an old Thor and he kind of looks weird like compared to this one, but I guess given their time they did a good job. The director actually was originally going to be Sam Raimi, the guy who actually directed the original Spider-Man trilogies, but he ended up leaving and going to direct Spider-Man. And so then flash forward to I think 2011 when this movie was released. They got, I can't remember who it is. If you know who it is, leave it in the comment down below, and thank you for that. So, let's just dive right in and start breaking down this movie. So, we start off going in New Mexico. We see a group hanging out in a van. That group is actually consisted of Eric Selvig, Darcy Silverglade, and Jane Foster. They are sitting there waiting for an astronomical event to occur, and they end up seeing it. They see it not knowing exactly what it is, and they start, as brilliant scientists do, they just sit there and they just run right into it and see what can they find out about this thing. And then a man suddenly appears and they hit him. Accidentally by just like smacking into him with the car. Then we hear the voice of Odin, and we jump back to Tonsberg, Norway in 965 AD. This village that we actually are seeing is the exact same one that the Nazis and Red Skull attack in the very beginning of Captain America to get the Tesseract. We then see, we hear Odin and see them explain the past of Mortal Man and the Frost Giants. And we are shown a fight between the Frost Giants and the Asgardians who come to protect the Mortal Man. And, the Asgardians, as of always, they always win. And so that's how it ends. Yeah. Then we jump back to Asgard, the Eternal Realm, and all its beauty. And we see a young Loki and a young Thor in a treasure room of Odin's. And Odin's sitting there telling them, a good king never seeks out war, but it must always be ready for it. And that quote will actually come back in later movies, in Thor 3, actually. We then jump to the future where Thor is now to be crowned king. We also see Chris Hemsworth striking the nice blonde hair of Thor for the very first time. Chris Hemsworth actually spent 6 months working out and eating protein to bulk up for this movie. He actually put on so much muscle that the costumes had to be remade because they were not expecting him to put on that much muscle. Yeah. Like, that's kind of crazy that that's how much muscle he put on. Yeah. Then we see Odin telling Thor a little about his weapon, Mjolnir. It could be used as a weapon, or it could be used for good to build something. We also see Tom Hiddleston for the very first time as the slick Loki, sitting there looking, Loki, I don't even know why I said Loki. Sitting there looking very uneasy, and we see some guards actually checking the treasure room that we saw at the very beginning of this. A few seconds before this. We then see the Frost Giants break in and destroy this thing called the Destroyer. Actually comes out and destroys them after they kill the guards. Then, as the coronation is still going on, you hear Odin sit there and whisper Frost Giants and cancels the coronation, and Thor does not become king. And then Thor sits there and starts throwing a little hissy fit when they go down into the treasure room, and finding out that they didn't steal anything, but they tried to attempt to steal something that actually was Jotunheim's, which is the home of the Frost Giants. Thor then tells Odin that they need to go to war with the Frost Giants, and that they need to pay for what they have done. We then see Thor throwing a hissy fit in the Grand Hall, of sitting there picking up a table and just throwing it that actually was full of food. Um, then Loki sits there and tries to calm him down, and also talks about attacking Jotunheim, and making them pay for ruining his coronation. Thor then talks about to the Warriors 3 to join in to meet to go to Jotunheim and just kill some frost giants. Then we see Heimdall, played by I cannot pronounce his name for the life of me, so I'm not even gonna try. Honestly, you all know who he is if you've seen him. They sit there and they try to get passage to Jotunheim. He opens the Bifrost after they ask him if they could just keep the Bifrost open. He then explains that if he kept the Bifrost open, he would actually destroy Jotunheim in the process. Yeah. Then we see a beam of light, and they are transported to Jotunheim. They then, as they get there, they walk to go meet with the king of Jotunheim, Laufey. Thor asks them, how did the Frost Giants get into Asgard? Laufey then tells him that the House of Odin is full of traitors. They then have a battle because, Thor's like, no, we don't have traitors. And he's like, no, you do. Then we actually, during this big fight scene, we get to see Mjolnir in full effect. Of him sitting there lifting Mjolnir up, lightning striking, and just crashing it down, and just, killing a whole bunch of people. Then we see the Frost Giants sits there, and they actually touched one of the guys, and all of his armor actually evaporates, and he is burned with, a severe frostbite, but, I think worse. Almost like a god's frostbite, since they are gods. But only one of them does not get burned when they are touched, and that is Loki. Loki sits there and gets touched, and his skin actually gets turned blue instead of burning. We then see Loki, Sith, and the Warriors 3 try to leave and getting chased by a giant frost giant creature. We then see Mjolnir helps Thor to fly and actually lifts off the ground. That quote actually comes back in Thor 3 when he sits there and he explains what Mjolnir was to, I think it's Korg. Yeah, it is Korg. You'll find out who he is in number 3 when we get there and break down. He ends up killing the creature by flying right into its mouth. Then they actually all get surrounded, and it looks all hope is lost for them. Then all of a sudden, Odin just comes riding down on an 8-legged horse. I can't remember the exact name for this 8-legged horse. It is actually in Norse mythology. If you guys know what it is, write it down in a comment down below, as always. They then return to Asgard. Thor and Odin sit there and start having a fight about Thor's actions, about how he shouldn't have gone to war. Or try to go to war with the Frost Giants. The fight ends with Odin banishing Thor to Earth until he can learn his lessons. Lesson. He also takes Mjolnir away from him and puts kind of a spell, but not really a spell on it, because it is the thing that will help lift Mjolnir. He ends up saying, whoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Supposedly, as of right now, that quote has actually been changed for the upcoming movie, and that quote is now, whoever holds this hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor, because they are hinting at that a female might be possessing the power of Thor, and we will be breaking that down when we get there. I think Thor 4 is not coming out till next year, so we have about a year to break it all down of all these movies, and then get all the conspiracy theories of what's going on. Yeah. We then jump back to the beginning, where we reveal that the man that they actually hit was Thor. He then starts yelling hammer, and Darcy sits there and she answers, yes, we know you're hammered. She ends up tasering him after he sits there and asks, where is he? And she's like, New Mexico. We then see Mjolnir is actually hitting the ground as they leave to take Thor to the hospital. We then see him in the hospital, freaking out, trying to break out of it. And then they end up actually putting him to sleep because he's freaking out so much. We then see that someone has actually discovered Mjolnir. Yeah. I guess I should also mention that Mjolnir can only be picked up by who is worthy. If you are not, it actually is very heavy and very hard to pick up, and you cannot pick it up at all. But the man who finds it first, he's just there, and he's like, I'm going to go try to pick it up, and he can't lift it up because, he is not worthy. Then we go back to Jane Foster's lab where they're trying to figure out what the heck happened the night before. Then they end up finding, from a science point of view, Darcy then discovers from one of the photos that the storm actually contained Thor. And, Thor then ends up waking up in restraints and ends up getting out of them. And then right as Jane arrives to come pick him up, because they're like, oh, we forgot something at the hospital, because they really want to know what the heck he was doing in the astronomical anomaly. Then right as she comes to get him, they end up smacking him again. We then see that Mjolnir has a few more people getting involved in it and has a little fan base going on, trying to sit there and pick her up. This is where Stanley's cameo is. He's an old man sitting there trying to, rev up the engine of a truck to pull out Mjolnir, and sadly, Stanley does not succeed. I actually would have really liked to see Stanley succeed at this. That would have been awesome. Because, I think there is, a comic that he actually does wield Mjolnir. I thought that would have been really, really cool to see. But, alas, it did not happen. We then see Coulson from the exact same scene that we saw at the end of Iron Man 2, the post-credit scene. We then see, we jump back to Jane Foster's lab, where they are now, where they found Thor some nice random clothes that actually has the name Donald Blake on it. I actually have a random book that actually was written by Donald Blake, which is actually really funny, because it's a questionnaire book about all the Marvel movies, and it was written by Donald Blake. They all then start to kind of question everything about him, how he got into the cloud and all that, and why does he keep calling himself a mortal form. We then go back to Asgard, where we see the warriors are talking about Thor, so they're trying to figure out how to get him back. Then Loki reveals that he was the one who told Heimdall to go get Odin to save them after they had left, thus banishing Thor. But he did not believe that Odin would have taken so long, and that he did not think that Odin would have reacted the way he did by banishing Thor. He then says he did it to save them all. Sif then tells Loki to talk to Odin about what they have now just talked about, and to go save Thor. He then tells her that because of Thor, it is not right. He's not right to be king, and that's why he really did it. And that how everything happened, it was fine. Then one of the Warriors 3 brings up how Laufey said there were traitors in the house of Odin. They then all just suspect that Loki is the one who is the traitor in the house. Then we go and jump back to the treasure room, where we see Loki is holding the thing that the Frost Giants were actually trying to steal from to bring back to Jotunheim. He picks it up, showing his true form, which is a Frost Giant. Odin is then catches him and explains how there was a casket and was the only thing that he took. The casket and this item was the only thing that he took from Jotunheim, and that he explains how he found a baby left to die, and that it was Laufey's son. Several scenes that dealt with Loki being abandoned by Laufey were actually cut from the original script. From the final script. In the original script, they had it. They did it just to make Loki seem less sympathetic. And, I don't think it really worked because, everyone's still sympathetic to Loki. And, Loki is still pretty badass. Then we see Loki starting to yell at Odin about what he has done. And then Odin ends up getting sent into a Odin sleep. We then see Jane and the crew sitting there taking Thor out to breakfast. While at the diner that they are at, Thor finds out about Mjolnir and that Mjolnir is on Earth with him. He then tells Jane if she helps him, he will help her get everything that she wishes. Then Eric Selvig tells her not to trust him. Then they leave to go back to their lab and find out S.H.I.E.L.D. has now taken all their research. Eric then tells the group that he knows a man who specializes in gamma radiation and that S.H.I.E.L.D. came up and he was never heard from again. I'm pretty sure that they are hinting at that he knows Bruce Banner, but, I don't think they're also hinting at it at the same exact time, because how would he have met him, honestly? That was, my big question. We then go back to Asgard, seeing Sith and the Warriors 3 asking Odin to release Thor from his banishment. They then realize Loki is now sitting on the throne until Odin has gotten back, and they sit there and they ask him why, and he's like, oh, well, he's in the Odin sleep, so I'm just going to take over for him now. They then ask him if he can end Thor's banishment. He then tells them that his first act cannot be to undo the Allfather's last, which is Odin. We then see Eric at a bookshop, or I think it's a bookshop. I was gonna say it might be a library. I'm pretty sure it's a bookshop. He's sitting there emailing his colleague, which might be Bruce Banner. I'm still really curious of if he is talking about Bruce Banner, and if it is, how does he know him exactly? While there, he ends up finding a book on the Greek gods, on the Norse gods, not the Greek gods. We also then see Thor sitting there walking into a pet shop, demanding something to ride so that he can go get Mjolnir. And the dude's like, all we got is, I think he sits there and he's like, that they only have dogs, cats, and birds. And he's like, give me one large enough to ride. I just think that's just kind of stupid. Jane then ends up picking him up and says, let's go find the satellite that you apparently have lost. And then we see Odin in the Odin sleep. Loki is sitting there asking why he kept the secret to his mother. I can't remember what her name is. Yeah, if you know what it is, write it down in the comment down below. I cannot remember for the life of me right now. It's right on the tip of my tongue too. Then we jump to see that S.H.I.E.L.D. has built a base around Mjolnir due to that they cannot lift Mjolnir at all. We then see Agent Silthwell. I can't say his name. You all know who I'm talking about. Agent Sitwell. For the first time, you don't know. You don't. He actually comes back in The Winter Soldier. He sits there, and then we see Thor actually got into the compound, and he's the one who, and Sitwell is the one who finds out that that there's a break in the gate. He then sends some guards to investigate, and that's where Thor ends up just sitting there beating them all up. Because, that's what Thor is just all about, sitting there out for blood. Yeah. This is also where we first see Clint Barton, a.k.a. Hawkeye, played by Jeremy Renner. We then see him with his signature bow and arrow. We actually see him almost pick up a gun, and he ends up choosing a bow and arrow. We then see him finally arriving. Then we finally see Thor finally arriving at his goal of Mjolnir. But as he goes to pick it up, he cannot lift it, deeming that he is unworthy to wield Mjolnir. Thor then is arrested, and we all see Heimdall sitting there watching the events unfold. We also see Jane and crew fighting if what Thor says is true or not. We jump back to seeing Thor being held for questioning by Agent Coulson. I just love Agent Coulson. I'm kind of, I can't say what happens, but, a show comes out of him, and, I didn't really like the show after, season 3 kind of, sucked. People will argue with me. I know you guys all will about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I didn't really like it when they started, talking about random powers. I have been thinking about rewatching it just to see what all the hype is, especially since I'm doing these videos and there could be clues in that. But I'm just letting you all know I will not be breaking down those episodes because I think there's like 6 seasons of it, and I don't really want to sit here for 6 seasons trying to break this all down because there's gonna be just a lot of stuff. If you guys want to watch it, I think it's on Netflix. If not anymore, it is definitely on Disney Plus, where you can watch almost every single Marvel movie too. But let's get back to this movie. We then see Coulson there asking Thor if he had been trained by anyone, like anywhere's, like, because he says that he's a good like military man, because he's more like a soldier. Oddly enough, Chris Hemsworth actually did not work as a soldier, but he actually worked as a construction worker before he was an actor. He actually stated that if he did not get the role of Thor, that he would be quitting acting and he would just be going and doing some more construction work. We then see a vision of Loki, as like he's not actually false. He's like falsely there because he's just a vision. Thor, he sits there and he falsely informs Thor that Odin is dead and tells him that because Odin is dead, that Thor will never be able to lift the hammer and that their mother has forbidden him to ever come home. During the scene, you can actually see that Thor's eyebrows have been bleached. It's actually such a weird thing. I think this is like the only movie that he actually bleached his eyebrows for. Then after he sits there and Loki says goodbye to Thor for the final time, or what he thinks is the final time, we then see Loki go and try to lift Mjolnir to see if he can actually do it. Actually, in one of the comics, Loki does actually lift up Mjolnir in the comics. Recently, I think they just recently touched upon it again. It was in the Infinity Warps that showed Loki lifting Mjolnir when they cross over into other dimensions. Yeah. Then we see Eric Selvig showing up to say that Thor is actually a physicist named Donald Blake. They then go out to go get a drink, and Eric tries to keep up with Thor drinking, not knowing that it's harder to get a god drunk. He ends up sitting there saying that if Thor leaves town tonight, he will buy him a drink. And so they sit there and they buy, I can't remember what the exact drink is called, but they sit there and they get a pint of beer and they drink a shot. They throw a shot into it. I can't remember what it's actually called because like it's a big thing. Then we see Loki sitting there meeting with Laufey. They agree to have Loki sneak in some frost giants into Asgard. And Laufey sits there and he's like, "Oh, so you're the one who let us into the treasure room." Then we see Heimdall has revealed that he has kind of figured out that Loki has been working with the Frost Giants, but like hasn't confirmed it because he sits there and he's like, "I couldn't see you while you were in Jotunheim," and he's like, "Oh well, that sucks, man." And he's just like, "Oh," and so he kind of knows that it's kind of shady since he can see everything. He then sits there and he freezes Heimdall so that he can't actually stop him. And then we see Thor bring Eric Selvig to Jane's like house, which is kind of it's basically just a motorhome. We then sit there and see Thor and Jane sit there and have a conversation on the roof of her lab, discussing the breakthrough that Jane has been looking for. Also, all the science dialogue in this movie was written by several physicists that the film actually hired to make sure that like all of it kind of looked sound realistic and possible. Thor then explains that the universe is hard and like is kind of like a tree. It's called a Yggdrasil. This is actually a reference to Captain America, which the Red Skull does say Yggdrasil, which means tree of the world. Yeah. we then I think at the end of it we actually see a picture of an Yggdrasil. Um, then we see that the Warriors 3. Then flash forward to the next day. We see that the Warriors 3 have now gone to go rescue Thor. I lied. Heimdall has not been frozen at this time yet. He does get frozen. He flashes them down, and then he gets frozen. To go rescue Thor. You then see Thor is sitting there helping them make breakfast, thus coming to terms with being stuck as a mortal in his mortal form. We then see Loki preparing the destroyer to kill Thor on Earth, and he's just saying, he's like, go to Earth and kill my brother. Sif and the Warriors 3 then show up to Thor and explain that Odin is not dead and that he can go home when he wants. We then see Loki freezes. That's when Heimdall gets frozen and lets all the frost giants in. We then see the Warriors and Sif trying to destroy the destroyer that has been sent. They actually, S.H.I.E.L.D. believes that it might be Tony's, because they're like, oh, is this Tony, one of Tony's? And he's like, Coulson's like, I don't know. I don't know what that dude does. Then we see Thor try to sit there and reason with Loki, who is controlling the destroyer, and he tells Loki to kill him instead of killing everyone in the city or town, since it's quite a bit smaller than a city. We then see, the destroyer sit there and smack him, thus kind of killing him, or like killing his mortal form. And all of a sudden, we see Mjolnir starting to wrestle in the ground and fly out of the ground, coming and reviving Thor and bringing him back to his God of Thunder state. Thor then battles the destroyer and defeats it. And then he runs into Coulson and tells him he can count him as an ally for like whatever comes into the future. Then he turns... Then we see the Frost Giants are walking into Asgard, like into the kingdom. And with Heimdall still frozen, they cannot get back to Asgard. And they sit there, and on Earth, they sit there and they're calling him over and over and over again. And then finally, Heimdall answers and opens the Bifrost for all of them. Thor ends up telling Jane that he was going to bring her to Asgard, but since something is clearly going wrong in Asgard, he must leave her on Earth until he comes back for her. Then we see Thor and his mother trying to defend herself. We see Thor's mother trying to defend herself and Odin from one of the Frost Giants. She's then held to watch Laufey kill Odin, which Loki comes in and kills Laufey himself. So it looks good so that he can become king. Thor then comes running in to tell his mother about how Loki sent the destroyer to kill him, and Loki then sets off to destroy Jotunheim because he ends up like running away from them with the use of the Bifrost, since Heimdall has now been taken to the healing room since, he was attacked by Frost Giants. Then we see a big fight actually break out between Loki and Thor. After Loki actually threatens to kill Jane, that he's going to go transport himself down to Earth and kill Jane. Then we see the Bifrost actually destroying itself because it's been open for so long, and also destroying Jotunheim. Thor then starts to break the bridge that holds the Bifrost onto the Rainbow Bridge. I can't remember what exactly the Rainbow Bridge is called. And we see it actually fall into a black hole. And right as we see that him and Loki are about to fall into this black hole, and all of a sudden Odin comes to save him. Then Loki sits there and tells Odin, "I did it, father." And he's like, "No, Loki." And Loki is so upset, and he ends up letting go of the stick that he was holding and falls right into the black hole, thus believing that he is dead. Then we see Jane realizing that Thor is not coming back to take her to Asgard with him, since she just has a feeling of it. We then see Asgard like a little bit after Loki's death, and we see Sif's in there asking Frigga, that's her name, that's Thor's mother, it's Frigga. I can't believe that I forgot that it was Frigga. She sits there and talks to her about how Thor is doing. She's and that she is very sorry for their loss. Yeah, she tells Sif that Thor mourns Loki, but he also misses Jane at the exact same time. We then see the same words exchanged between Thor and Odin. When we see Thor talk to basically like the exact same words of like saying that he misses Jane and that he also mourns Loki. He also says that I think he offers up. No, he doesn't. It's not this movie that he offers up Mjolnir. Sorry. He sits there and he's like, oh, that someday he will be a good enough king, and that there will not be a wiser king than Odin himself. Yeah. We then see Thor going and talking to Heimdall, asking about Jane. Heimdall then tells him that she searches for him, and we actually see her sitting there trying to find him by going through every like astronomical event that occurs. And then we see the end credits starting to roll. We see some space images, which actually are based off of images from the Hubble Space Telescope, and took more than a year to actually create these pictures that they put on there. We then, of course, will see the rest of the movies. Yeah. In the rest of the movie, it took more than a year to do this. I don't know what I'm blabbling out and about. It's okay. It's okay, everyone. We then see a post-credit scene, which consists of Eric Selvig and Nick Fury. He sits there and Nick Fury shows Eric Selvig the Tesseract. And yes, this is the third time that we have seen the Tesseract. Ding, 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 ding. And we then see Loki appear in a reflection of Eric Selvig and says, well, I guess that's worth a look. Actually, Samuel Jackson actually described his frequent Nick Fury cutscenes in like the ending scenes of movies as the connection tissue of the Avengers. And then, you know, everyone, that is the whole movie. There is nothing else. Yeah. And as always, if I miss something, leave it in a comment down below. Tell me what I missed. And, you know, if you guys wanted to see me talk about something other than Marvel, leave it down in a comment down below, and I will look into whatever you guys tell me to go look into. And I will catch you guys on the next video. See ya.